here with Karen Pryor, and we're going to talk a little bit about culture. And in particular, one of the things that gets thrown around a lot in news media and in Christian circles is that we are in a culture war. And I wonder, Karen, what you think about that. Are we in a culture war? Is that how we should think about culture around us?
Well, I think Christians are always in a culture war. Wherever we are and whatever time and place in history we are. But I'm not sure it's helpful to think about it that way. I mean, we are warring against principalities always, right, as long as we're here on this earth. But whatever culture we find ourselves in as Christians, and of course Christians are in every culture across the globe and have existed for 2,000 years, so in different times and who knows how much longer. I think if we think of ourselves as being at war with the culture, I think that makes us less effective in engaging and transforming the culture. I mean, we are in the culture, and we're here in whatever culture that we are because God, in His sovereignty, has placed us here. Yeah. And so I think we just need to think of ourselves as being part of the culture, but also like yeast attempting to be leaven to enrich and improve the culture, but not outside of it at war with it.
Yeah, it seems to be that, I mean, some of the issue there is this notion of war and how we want to put that, how we, some of this could be theology and it could also be strategy in how we present ourselves to the public. And if we're running around saying, we're in a war with you, it might not make people real eager to talk to us at that point.
Exactly.
It's like we're at a war and we're gonna and there seems to be, I think what some of what's going on with this is there seems to sometimes be a triumphalism attached to that, and again, there as a theologian, there's some theological things that I think we need to think about, but I think just on a matter of strategy. How do you see this playing out? I know you're writing in various media outlets. Help us on just the strategy side of things, or with our rhetoric. How does this kind of impact people? What are the best ways we can actually go about engaging people?
Well, I mean, as an English professor and a writer, I mean, I find words very important. So just a word like that, war. To use it has the effect that you talked about to those that we're engaging with, but it also affects our own mentality. I mean, it puts us in a position of being against rather than being for. And of course, there are many things that we should be against. And I'm one who has never really shied from being against a lot that is going on in our culture. Yet, I think that to come alongside, to think of ourselves as being part of the culture because God placed us here and trying to use our language and see our posture as one that is part of and part of the redemptive element, I guess, of the culture. I mean, as I said, God created culture. He put us in, within these people groups and places, and so there's a reason why we're here, and I don't think it's always to be at war with the culture.
Yeah, it was when I was thinking through this, and I've talked to some friends about this, where you have biblically you have the Apostle Paul, and he can on one hand speak in Romans 1 with such kind of just straight to the point, but he's about these cultural issues that's going on, and he's very much set against those things, very much against, and it comes very clear in Romans 1, and yet the same Paul can turn around in Acts 17 and address, and so Romans 1, to Christians, to the church.
Right.
And this is what we're against. This is clearly. And then Acts 17, the starting point isn't what we're against. Anyway, that's not the end.
The starting point is what we have in common.
Yes, and so he begins in Acts 17 with, okay, how can I build with these pagans, with these people that you think that he doesn't have anything in common with? We know what he thinks, Romans 1, but yet he tries to find where are the connecting points, and how do I connect with this? And so I think we see even the strategy in some places in Scripture where Paul, I think, uses language of war, but he chooses when he will use that
Right.
language, and he
Yeah.
chooses wisely.
And I mean, I think his admonishments are for the church,
Mm-hmm.
not for the culture. I mean,
Yeah.
we as a church are to be different and set apart from the culture. So the admonishment is when we begin to look like the culture. But when we are engaging with the culture, I think Paul models a much more conciliatory and approach, seeking common ground rather than
Yeah.
opposition.
Yeah, as a starting point,
Right,
and then
right.
saying, okay, but clearly these are there's a dividing line here,
Right.
and he gets to the resurrection in Acts 17, and people aren't liking what he's talking about when he gets to Jesus, and that's going to happen to
Right,
us. But
right.
but building on this, I
Right.
think these are conversations we need to have, because within the Christian community, there's different views on how to approach culture, how to do this, and
Right.
and I think even with there being different views, I think there's much that we can have common ground on. I think one reason there's different views is because the Bible at different points stress things differently, and some of us can pick up on those different emphases in the Bible. But I think it's important for us to have these conversations and figure out how we can work together as we
Right.
go to be salt and light in this world.
If there were one easy answer, then we wouldn't be having this discussion about culture.
Yeah, that's right.